What up?
Hi.
And welcome to Certified Life Coach Institute CLCI Live.
Wow, that was really quiet.
Am I quiet?
Are you tired, man?
Hello and welcome to
There.
CLCI Live.
Now I feel like I'm
Much
watching
better.
the news.
And right over here we have Samuel Gozo joining us on the top, and then I was trying to do my what's that ESPN guy who does the drawings?
Oh yeah, who is that?
The football
he
guy.
has stuff in
Boomer?
the back.
Yes, he's
Chris
a
Eisen?
boomer.
I think.
What?
I think
He has things written in the back like pickles are just cucumbers soaked in evil. is that the guy?
I
think
don't
Anthony
think so,
feels
but I
that
like
way.
that saying.
Oh, okay.
Pickles are cucumbers soaked in evil.
I mean, yeah, to the right person, there's some truth there.
That is true. That name will come to me, but we are talking Controversial Coaching 101. And this time we're talking the Accreditation Wars, ICF versus non-accredited coaches. And when we say non-accredited coaches, we mean coaches from other accrediting institutions and places, and the people who just don't even bother with that. They just maybe take a class from, somewhere not even registered anywhere, or they might just watch one YouTube video and call themselves a life coach and call it a day. We're fighting everyone here today on Live.
Including the cats. We're fighting the
including
cats
the
today too.
So how do we feel?
We're not supposed to sell ourselves.
Yeah, and we're supposed to be non-biased and look at the competition fairly. And let's
We can
just
do that.
say I'm not impressed. Well, actually, okay, I'll take that back. There are some good reasons why maybe you want to go somewhere else other than an ICF-accredited school. But it depends on your situation and your budget.
I can tell you, long time ago, we were not ICF accredited, and we were very good still at what we did.
Oh wow, I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. When
That's
we first got started,
our dirty little history.
Says he wants to
Back in
remain unbiased. He says
2009.
impressive and dirty.
Okay.
I think it was 2012.
When we became accredited?
Yeah. 2012 or 2013. I can't recall which, but yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What prompted you guys to make the switch?
It's accredited.
Bada bing, that's it. That's all we gotta say. I guess from the business perspective, why do you think that decision was made?
Because it was starting to become, and I wasn't on the phones back then. That wasn't under my watch. But it was starting to become a really harder sell without having ICF review our content and be accredited with them. I mean, that's really the honest to goodness truth. People wanted to know that they were attending something, that whether or not they decided to do something, they wanted it to count should they want to move forward with the coaching practice.
Okay. Now, I guess where should we start? I think the best place to start is from, I guess, the ground up, which is just no accreditation, no formal background sort of training whatsoever.
No.
Oh, no, never mind.
I disagree. What do we say there? There's no formal. I think just a sort of overview of what the options are as a coach, because there isn't just ICF. ICF isn't the only option, right?
Yeah.
There are other certifying agencies or other governing bodies. There's lots of acronyms and things like that out there. So why don't we start there? What governing bodies have you guys heard of? What is out there? What exists?
I'm seeing there are quite a few of them, and from someone who started off in coaching, very much not under an ICF accredited certification, there's ISO 9001, there's the CPD standards, there's a really long alphabet soup, International Accreditation Organization certifying world-class coaching. That is an actual acronym, by the way, guys. There's another CPD standards, the American Board of Sexology. There is the CPD certification service. The list goes on. So many different ones that are out there.
Yeah. I think the one of the two or bigger ones I've heard about is the Center for Credentialing Education, the BCC, the Board Certified Coach. And one that pops up on lists a lot is the National Board for Health and Wellness Coaching. Somebody asked me about that recently too, unrelated to CLCI. Somebody was asking me about that. So there's a lot of different other accrediting agencies that may have a list of, dozens to hundreds of schools that can train you to be a life coach. So there's a lot of options out there.
Yeah, I'm seeing, the top 6 being listed as the International Coach Federation, the International Authority for Professional Coaching and Mentoring, Center for Credentialing and Education, European Mentoring and Coaching Council, International Association of Coaching, and the Association for Coaching. But then there's also subsets that come in too, where we are the there's one for just ADHD, which is the Professional Association of ADHD Coaches, PAC. And there's a whole bunch of, and it gets so confusing so fast. So I guess maybe we start with what we know. Why we have chosen ICF. Why? What is it? What tell me.
Well, it's like you said, there's so many out there, but the thing with the ICF is they've been around since 1995, proving that they are doing things for individuals and organizations, starting with Coach U, and then the ICF right there in the late 1990s. They've positioned themselves in such a way where when you think coaching, if you seriously get into coaching, you won't get super far without hearing this is ICF. So if you're going with a certification or an accrediting body that is pegged to be the future of coaching, or rather, I'd want to go with whoever is the most popular, and I want to see why they are the most popular. So that's why I went for ICF, while also, mind you, I was looking at the price tag on ICF during my rookie years as a coach, and I'm like, I don't think I can afford any of that. So I went with the non-accredited bodies first so I can learn about the industry, learn about coaching. And then I told one of my best friends, it was like a super late night. I'm like, dude, I want to get an ICF credential within 5 years. This was in 2019. I got credentialed in 2021. So with that, they're the best of the best. They position themselves as such, and I wanted to be a part of that. So people would take coaching seriously, take me seriously, and I could learn more than just going off of YouTube videos and Tony Robbins.
Jeez, what did you do with the remaining 3 years?
The remaining 3 years kept on going because I'm kind of a psychopath when it comes to training and certifications.
So, and maybe this is where we get to that maybe we've jumped ahead a little here, but so we've got all these accrediting bodies, right? Ultimately, what do they do? What is their purpose? Why do they even exist?
So my best guess for now is so that there is some standardization of education. So if we go back in time to when there's maybe no accreditation standards or any industries overseeing it, you don't know what kind of product you're getting from coach to coach, from school to school. And it kind of makes coaching as a profession look bad.
And steps on a lot of toes in the licensed professionals who have gone through years and years of education, practice, the things that they've done. It if our coaches, not our coaches, if coaches started dabbling that, why go to school and why get a license?
Yeah.
That kind of became an important aspect.
So what the mutual beneficial like aspect of having some of these credentialing bodies is that it normalizes the profession and raises the standards of whatever product or service, you know, life coaches bring to the table. So even though ICF competes with all these other institutes, really it's probably for the good that these other places exist, so that, you know, it's kind of the same. And in terms of ICF, an ICF accredited coach is an ICF accredited coach. A national board and health and wellness coach has their sort of standardized and normalized coaching practices. So it makes it at least easier for the client and the consumer to pick a coach and know what it is they're getting into. So that's one reason why.
But are clients out there picking credentialed coaches and certified coaches?
I think.
Well, who are the clients?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the trend is moving that way for individuals. I don't know that they know what it is unless they're part of the industry. Businesses, without a doubt. And I think that's probably what's moving the pendulum for individuals is they are part of a business. They have coaching within their premises to take it outside. They are now looking for those credentials before they seek assistance there.
Yeah. So, for example, a lot of life insurance companies. This was a question that was asked to me when I was on a phone call, you know, maybe a couple weeks ago. Life insurance companies typically accept National Board for Health and Wellness Coaching, you know, approved coaches, and specifically
life insurance.
Life insurance and health insurance. Sorry,
Health insurance. Oh, okay.
I meant health insurance. So one of the top ones. This is a list I was looking at on Very Well Mind of, you know, where to find the best life coaches. Lemonade is a health insurance company. They only accept and hire life coaches who are national health and wellness coaches. They don't accept ICF, and this varies by company by company. To me, from what it looks like, ICF is the most ubiquitous. It applies to a lot of different places, but some industries might be specific, and they might say you only can have a BCC, or you can only be accredited through this other, you know, institute or program. And that could be for a variety of reasons. It kind of makes sense with the health insurance. You have people who are board certified health and wellness coaches. But it's different for every industry.
You know what's really funny though is like I'm looking at a list of the top coaches right now. I have a list in front of me of the 19 by Paperbell, 19 of the world's best coaches.
These are like individuals?
Individuals, yes.
Okay.
So we have. I've just looked at Rich Litvin. Rich Litvin doesn't have a certification or a credential, and he's on the list. I just looked at Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins doesn't have a credential.
But hold on. Can I ask what is their criteria for best coach?
I can find out for you.
Okay.
I think these are just big. These are big coaches, right?
Right, but that's so it's like a list of celebrity coaches. Doesn't mean they're the best coaches, in my opinion.
Well, they're the most successful coaches.
Most successful. Esther Perel here. I'm looking at hers. And I'm not seeing, there's a lot that don't have them. And so I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Mind you, they all have experience credentials in a different way.
Right.
And it brings up this question, do we know if they're actually coaching? But we have a definition of what coaching is. What are the definitions of coaching? Like because they might vary. We live by a very, strict sort of structure when it comes to coaching, but these are listed as the biggest coaches. They may not at all be using what we call coaching. So this is life coaching as a profession is isn't as old as it may seem. The concept of life coaching on their mindset, purpose, relationships, and other areas has been around since the 1980s. Many of the life coaches who started their careers a few decades ago grew into internationally known icons later on as authors and speakers. Others have risen to the top of their industry at an early age as influencers through social media platforms. Here are some of the best life coaches in no particular order who impact lives around the globe with their work. We've gathered some of the most well-known coaches who not only write and speak about coaching philosophy, but actually work with people personally to help them achieve their dreams. So that's what
that last little tidbit is probably what I would use to qualify them as a coach.
Say that last part again, Anthony.
That last tidbit where they work individually with people, like instead of just speaking on the stage or just writing books or making YouTube videos and calling themselves a coach. And I'm speaking more broadly than the ICF definition of a coach. You have to work with people one-on-one, whether, group coaching or, one-on-one individual coaching. There has to be a mutual conversation between two people or two or more people rather than just speaking on a stage.
Yes. And with the individual coaching pieces, it's like what's already been said. Who's to say that they're actually doing coaching as defined by that, number one? Number two, I recently saw a YouTube video from someone who I think they're working on like a master's thesis or something. And they came up with like the truth about life coaching. And within a few seconds, he said that another word for life coach is mentor. And if you've been through our classes, then you know that there is a distinct difference between coaching and mentoring. But because there is no international or federal regulations around what coaching is, at least here, it opens the door for, as some of our other peers say, it could open it up to being the wild, wild west where coaching is this thing, that, and the other thing. And it's not to say it's bad. It's just, what exactly is it? Is it coaching? Is it mentoring? And for me, immediately, when I think of best coaches, how are we gauging the success of their clients? If they're achieving their short-term dreams and then they crash out less than a year later, have they really succeeded? That's my thought.
Yeah. How can you say that someone's the best coach just because they're rich and famous? What did they do for people? Aren't we able to measure that? I would hope.
Yeah. And to be clear, I am not doubting that these guys are giving value. They've earned their keep. They've earned their name. I love Rich Litvin. I'm a firm believer in what they do. We just have to ask those other questions too. That's my biggest thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe most successful life coach doesn't actually equate to best life coach.
What's the definition of success? That's
making a lot of money.
Well, I mean,
it's true. They make a lot of money.
But anyone can call themselves a coach and act like a coach and probably grift that to make a lot of money.
That would be funny if like Jeff Bezos tomorrow, then he's like, I'm also a life coach, which now makes me the most successful life coach because I have all this money.
Well, and that would be true. He's very rich.
Yeah. So.
But I was thinking about one of those names that you were throwing around. I watched something, and I'm not going to pick on that name, but I watched something as a return. The person came back in after being told what to do by that said coach. And they said, that's not what I did. Like, it was the 3 month later experience. They said that was the wrong decision. It was on the spot. I was in front of everyone. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I went and did it. And then I regretted it. And I had to do this is my words. They had to do the backstroke to figure out what they really wanted. And part of that argument that was used on that flip side from that team was then they did the work. But it was after trauma. Wouldn't you want to do the work before you just did what somebody else told you to do? Wouldn't you want to do the work before, you came down to a decision and had the support of what you wanted your decision to be, than to have to do the backstroke? I don't know. I just think it was a missed opportunity. I guess that's what I'll say. In the coaching world, and to really know what the coaching world is like is not at all. Do we tell our clients what to do?
Right.
So this is this is why we put this as controversial coaching, right? In this topic here, because the truth of the matter is there isn't a direct requirement in coaching for anyone to have a credential or a certification. There does become, in certain cases, a need or a requirement depending on different organizations, kind of what Anthony had mentioned. So I know the U.S. government acknowledges ICF and ICF accredited training, but not other trainings. So as you get into maybe more specific subgroups of people that would want to be coaches, as opposed to just your average person looking to become a coach, there might be some more constraints and constrictions and requirements of which organization to go with, so that we can get really lost in the weeds with like the nitty gritty of which one to go with and which certifying agency you should choose. But before we go there, I know that we have people here that have had experience working with both credentialed and non-credentialed coaches. And I would love to invite them to maybe share that experience and what the differences in those spaces were for them. Anybody?
I haven't done that in a long time, so I can't speak.
I mean, I can certainly speak. So the first two coaches that I hired were not certified. They were certified, but they were not certified through ICF accredited training. I didn't know anything about that. So my thought as a client was, are they certified? Great. That was it. And so this is where it is controversial, because your average client, if I'm a representation of the average client, I guess, doesn't have.
What's the definition then? I'm just kidding.
Doesn't have that knowledge. Now, as coaching continues to grow and be more talked about, because it is being more talked about, there are people that are talking about like the scams that are involved under the guise of coaching. That's big now. That's like a big thing I see a lot about. The more people talk about it, the more people are going to become educated on what to look for when it comes to selecting a coach. And so, me now, I would do a more thorough vetting before I hired someone. But me then just didn't know any better. It was just a matter of like, I really wanted to work with this person and they were certified, and I liked how I felt when I was in their presence and when we had conversation, and just the way they talked about the experience of coaching really had me intrigued. And it's what led me to where I am today. So I certainly do not, regret it. But the second one that I hired, so the first one, I ended up just kind of realizing, she's great, but maybe not the best fit for me right now. And so then I hired someone else that I felt was more of a fit, and she was for a while until she wasn't. And then that ended pretty poorly because she didn't have the ethical framework. She didn't have the guidelines to keep her in these guardrails. And she ultimately, in my opinion, caused harm because she didn't have that. She just didn't. It was like she was bowling, but without the bumpers?
The guardrails.
yeah, I mean, she needed that. And she didn't have that. And I didn't know any better until it was too late and it had caused harm. So that's just my experience in retrospect. You know, again, no regrets. I'm happy with what I achieved through coaching. But, you know, going forward, I would definitely have a different knowledge base when it comes to choosing a coach. And I would be very thorough in the vetting process of who I selected.
Mhm. I had one person that coached me that was very much not ICF accredited. And after being coached by an ICF credentialed coach, the difference was night and day. Also, just little side mission on that one. There was another organization that had a different philosophy on coaching that, for lack of better terms, my coaching philosophy, having been trained by an ICF accredited institute, was stacked against that. And some things that I did, which would have been right by ICF standards, were wrong by theirs. But anyway, so the coach that coached me, not ICF accredited, will not say the name of the organization. All I will say is it was very aggressive. And if that kind of coaching happened to me a year earlier, I would have been probably damaged enough not to even pursue coaching anymore. Because like Jen said, there was no ethical framework. It was pretty much, if I were to guess what their modus operandi was in business, it was get clients results, whatever it takes. And I can respect people who want to get results for their clients, but you also have to think of what the industry is going to look like if what you did was on the front page of the newspaper or was the headline on the 6 o'clock news.
What do you mean by aggressive, like, techniques and stuff like that?
Basically, first of all, very directive, told me, like, try to give me advice and tell me what to do. And even some of the questions were not very appropriate. Like, very much overly Rambo'd life and death style questions where I had to give a particular answer and I wasn't safe to explore anything else other than this is the result that I want for you. I'm just like, oh, okay. Well, thank you for the advice. I will never coach with you again. One time. And you know what? Some people like that. I didn't. I'll stop right there.
I have one more piece to add about my experience that I think is really important. So I didn't know that this is the type of stuff that they were kind of coaching me on. But they were definitely using like a lot of manifestation style coaching. Okay. So a lot of like, if you just believe it, it will happen. You have to believe harder. Let's like figure out ways that you can make this real in your mind so it will become real in reality. And I just didn't know that that wasn't like the way. I was open to doing anything to get results. So I definitely was, in my opinion, manipulated into doing some stuff that, looking back, I'm like, oh, bless your heart, honey. Like, I mean, it's, it's so much more. Yes, I think belief is so important, but it is one element of results. Like, there's belief plus action equals results. It's not, if we could all just believe our way into results, we would have a very different world. Like, so if it, if that was real, and maybe I do believe that there is an aspect of it that is real. I do believe the belief stuff is important, but it's not the only thing. And these coaches were coaching me as if that was the only thing in the way for my results. And I started to feel uncomfortable. And so I started like looking into it, and I realized like, oh, they just don't know any better. And I'm just going to make sure, like, anytime they try to coach me in that way, I'm just going to keep redirecting them to, like, for me, it's more than that. But yeah, I mean, that's like, gosh, if you don't know, that coaching's more than just belief work. If you think, I mean, because there's a lot of weird stuff out there where they are selling you on all you have to do is work with me and I'll mind manipulate you, and then boom, you'll dream up all these incredible results. It'll be so easy, you won't have to do anything, and then you'll just do that for the rest of your life. You can just manifest anything. All you have to do is believe it, and there it is. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I want to add to this conversation that ICF also accredits schools who do manifestation, hypnotherapy, NLP, other things too.
Yes.
This is not outside of ICF. ICF accredits these kinds of schools as well. I'm not going to put judgment on those kind of things for now, but that could turn people off of some accrediting agencies because it's like, well, you know, you have school, but you have also.
Yeah, let's be clear though, really quick though. I credit schools that have like other trainings in that space. But if a school is teaching ICF's core competencies, which they are required to do, so when we submit for hours, we in our certifications trainings, 80% of those hours have to be core competency based. So something like hypnotherapy or NLP would be outside of core competency based training. So they're going to you have to think like, okay, I'm going to get a certificate, and I might get a certificate that is going to be coaching and NLP, but that's going to mean that you're going to have a section of it that is coaching and then a section of it that is NLP, and they're going to be very separate from one another. Just so you're aware, or at least that's how it should be.
When we were researching something, we found a school that's ICF accredited that you get 8. Remember, Sam, I know you remember this, 8 different certifications. And one was like energy worker. One was like, I don't know, they were like insane titles. And it was like, you go through our program and you're going to get 8 certifications and you can market yourself in 8 different ways. And we're like, what?
Yeah.
I think 2 is the safe number for us.
And you know what? In their defense, they've gotten ICF accredited for a reason. Whatever the reason is, we don't know. But just to piggyback off of, and I'm not saying that to be snarky. I'm like, I legit don't know. I wasn't there in their board meeting when they were like, hey, let's get ICF accredited. But like, to Brooke's point, that school, like other ICF accredited schools, have something more than just, this is our thing. We have the base of the ICF core competencies. We have what we're rooted in the ICF code of ethics. So it makes me feel, although I may not believe in every modality in life coaching out there, much less every modality of change your mindset and change your beliefs, they got other stuff too. And I think that's the reason why people who like them go to them. And that's why people who have certifications like that and understand that belief is just one element of goal attainment or problem solving tend to do well with their clients.
Yeah.
But the main certification, though, that's wild.
Yeah. I want to quickly answer Kat Sweeney's question.
Yes.
I wonder about the differences between programs that say they are ICF accredited but are way shorter. How do they get away with that? I'm assuming this is because we do it shorter, but that's shorter on a time span of, we still have 60 hours of training. I think what you mean by that question is like, this school only offers like 12 hours of training, something like that. They can say they're ICF accredited when they have CCEs. So those are most likely CCE hours that you're looking at versus a level 1 program, or, you know, in the before times, ACSTH programs or ATTP programs, which required you to have, you know, 60 hours or 30 hours of training. CCEs, you can have a 4-hour, you know, asynchronous video that you watch. You call yourself a life coach, and then.
Well, so you can't. I guess you can.
I'm giving a tongue-in-cheek example.
Yeah, but they've definitely they've made some bigger differentiation with regard to that. Like in the perfect world, ICF would have coaches complete a level 1 training and then have CCEs be continuing coaching education, which is what they are intended to be. And so it used to be a little less like that, where schools would not they would veer away from teaching the core competency, that 80-20 rule, and have less hours. And then they would be able to call them, say, hey, we're certifying you. Hey, this counts, and it's only CCEs. But ICF has gotten more strict in that regard, I think, because they want to continue to make their certification a more solid certification process and credentialing process.
It's still kind of liberal, and it's still kind of the ICF's, I wouldn't say fault, but they still allow people to apply via the portfolio path. And the portfolio path allows people to compile 60 hours of CCE education from, you could go to 60 different programs and get 1 hour each from those 60.
Oh man.
Make it a portfolio, and then you probably couldn't do this, but I'm just giving you an example. You can use all CCEs for your 60 hours in a portfolio pathway, and even hours taken outside of ICF accredited schools. Now, they're probably going to look a little bit closer at your application to see where you actually went, but ICF does allow that portfolio pathway still as a way of getting your credential, which I personally don't think is a great idea. I think
it's harder. It's way harder to do that.
Yeah, it's harder for the consumer, and I just don't think it makes for as good of a coach as if they went to a level 1 program where it's all just contained in one school. That's just my opinion, though.
Not to mention, portfolio applications more expensive than the level 1 or the level 2. So it's like
you have to submit
so it's like
materials. Yeah.
Like you're paying in time and more money if you're going down that shorter pathway. But listen, everyone's got their reason why they do one or the other. I don't know.
Yeah. Things were different when it was the 3, application pathways with ACSTH, ATTP, and portfolio. Now we're making it more uniform, which is the whole point of having these accrediting bodies, is that they make things more uniform and easier for both the coach and the client to, figure these things out and get information on. That being said, I want to compare that to I keep on getting this mixed up. I just have to look at the website. The Center for Credentialing Education, the board certified coach, they have a ton of different ways where you can become a credentialed coach with them, including having an ICF credential and plus your bachelor's degree. If you have those 2 things, you are eligible to be an ICF accredited coach and then also be a board certified coach. And there are schools that are accredited in both places, in both the ICF and the BCC, or the health and wellness coaches. So you'll come across programs that might be accredited by the ICF for like 4 hours, but the majority of their training is under a different credentialing agency, and that's just because they, satisfy those requirements. Board certified coaching is the thing. Yikes. I wouldn't say that's a yikes. I've come across companies and organizations for a school that I was talking to about getting their coaches certified, or somebody who was administrator for a school. They were asking about if our pathway allowed people to become board certified coaches, and I pretty much explained the same thing to them. If you get your ICF credential, you can also become a board certified coach. Oh, yikes that I didn't know about it. So now we're all learning. But they were able to do it because they were educators, so they had their master's or PhD. I forgot what it was specifically, but they were able to go that route because that better suited their needs. And they already had their, background education from their universities, and that satisfied the requirements for them. So it might depend later on in your career. You might already have the credentials and experience necessary to be a board certified coach rather than an ICF accredited coach. And that might be what's best for you depending on what company you're applying for.
Well, most businesses, though, are definitely much more into the ICF model. versus the BCC, because that has a tendency to be more, at least in my experiences, we've gotten more therapists going down that route.
Mhm. Absolutely. So I guess I'll just pop us to the next topic, which I brought up in the beginning. If I'm a coach, why do I even want to bother with any of these? Like I can just take an online course or maybe watch a couple YouTube videos and not bother getting accredited from anywhere. Like why? And it shows from what Brooke
Well-
mentioned, the most successful coaches, they don't have those same education requirements. So why am I caring about that as a new coach that's starting out?
First of all,
Yeah.
just because you can do that doesn't mean you should do that.
And just because you see a celebrity coach on a list without a certification does not mean it's the rule. If anything, it's probably the exception. That's number one. Number two, you theoretically can do whatever you want to. Heck, I've heard of coaches that have ICF credentials that don't follow everything to the letter, and that's between them and the ICF. It all depends on what you want to do as a coach. If this is something you want to do in your town where you just serve the people in your community and you don't necessarily need a certification for that, if you're operating ethically under those ethical standards, then one might argue you don't necessarily need that certification. If you plan on going beyond more than just your area of influence, if you want to work for organizations, if you want to be hired as an internal coach, that's something you want to do. If you want to stop having people say, you know what, I'm not interested in consultations because you recognize that people aren't hiring you because you don't have a certification, that might be a reason to go for it. It all depends. And I tell people who call the school all the time, I ask them, where do you see yourself taking coaching? Because not everyone has the desire to go down an ICF credential pathway, nor does everyone have to. But if you recognize that people are looking for that, whether those are professionals or personal people, then I'd say go for it. If you recognize people aren't going for it or don't care about your certifications, but you think to yourself, I want to do more than just serve my customers. I want to serve the industry. I want to make coaching look good. I want people to see, and this is actually part of my own coaching practices mission statement, to offer a demystified and results-driven coaching experience. You better believe I'm going to have some certifications and credentials next to my name, because it ain't just about Larry that I'm working with from friggin', I don't know, the Certified Financial Planning Institute. I'm like, it's about more than just him. It's about people who watch our interactions and look and say, what is this coaching thing? I've seen Tony Robbins. I've seen insert influencer here. What is this? That's why I do this. And if you care about the industry and advancing it the way the ICF does, align with it. To make a long story short, look at the mission of the ICF or the mission of who you're trying to align with. If there's synergy, connect with it. If there's no synergy, that's a conversation you got to have with yourself. So that's why someone would bother, because their short-term and long-term goals align with what the industry is looking for, what onlookers are looking for, what scammers are, what victims of scams are afraid of. All of that in a bag of chips. I feel like I'm going to start rambling here if I don't stop, but hopefully that answers your questions, and I will yield my spot.
Kat brings up something else too. With until they do require it, they possibly, if we're speaking the United States, state governments or federal governments require coaches to be credentialed in some way. Therapists have to, psychologists has to. Why not life coaches? I think ICF's official stance is that they don't want it to go that way. If I recall somewhere, Lisa, you telling us about this, the ICF doesn't really want it to go that way.
The ICF Board of Ethics doesn't want it to go that way.
Gotcha.
They want to sell self-govern.
Yeah. Which is reasonable because they're international. They don't want to be, tied down to different governments, or states, whatever they say a life coach is, especially if it doesn't go their way. But I have a feeling, and of course, yeah, Kat, if the government can make money off of it, it will. I have a feeling that it will probably be because of a negative event related to a life coach that this becomes an issue, and governments start to say, hey, you need to, if you call yourself a life coach, you have to get credentialed from the ICF or the ICF and the becoming a board certified coach, one of those things, or maybe others.
So
it's kind of hedging your bets that in the future it might go that way. It might not.
But if that happens, I would imagine no one calls themselves a life coach. They just pick a different name. They pick a very specific name, and then that's the workaround. So
Yeah.
Legal
I was
loophole.
exactly thinking that. When he was talking in that way, I'm thinking, those that want to stay unregulated will stay unregulated.
right.
Those
Exactly.
of us that want to do good work, make sure that we're doing it properly, and really empowering the client to take control of what they want to do. That's a different format than what some people are comfortable doing. They like to be the go-to, and I'm going to tell you what to do, and be the one that gets the glory versus the client. Really.
Well, I think everybody's gonna
Mm-hmm.
everybody's gonna tell you that their way is the best way, right? Like, no matter who we all want to believe that, and we have biases that are built into us that make us believe that. So, is there an ethical responsibility for a coach to get a credential or a certification, or somebody who is calling themselves a coach?
So this
This is
is
going to be a bold answer to this. No.
yeah. I have a controversial answer as well.
No, it is not. It's not ethical. It is ethical for the coach, whoever they're certified by or not certified by, to represent themselves very honestly. Let the people know who they are not, because I am not going to be convinced that you're operating ethically just because you have a certification or a credential. I didn't seen it. So you can do it. You can have the letters next to your name and still cowboy your way through it. No offense to any cowboys listening to anybody. Just want to make sure that's clear too. So as far as, is it a coach's ethical responsibility to get a credential? No. It is their ethical responsibility to represent themselves honestly, transparently, authentically, and not try to work their way around certain things that they ought not to just to get a client. Like, here's another controversial one. I would rather see a non-certified coach honestly get a client than see a credentialed coach who only looks at people as potential clients. It's like, I got a certification now. I got a credential now. Now, where are my clients? And now they're going on this hard selling thing without actually giving about whoever they're talking to. Like, just because you got a certification or credential doesn't mean you're operating ethically. Conversely, just because you don't have a certification, I've met plenty of coaches who don't have those certifications and represent themselves with integrity above all, who don't have certifications, they do a wonderful job, and they're ethical. Did that answer that question?
I kind of believe the opposite. And I'm gonna explain why.
Okay.
I think ethics only comes into play when there is some sort of governing body or board that's coming into play. So if I'm coming this at a consumer, like from a consumer's perspective, in a general sense, yes, a coach who is non-certified can act ethically, whatever my ethical code is, but there's no real compunction for them to. That really only applies and is incentivized and decentivized, to act unethically when you are accredited. Let's say for the ICF, I can only speak to the ICF, for example, because if you have a problem with the coach, you can submit You can file a complaint against them, and depending on the severity, they could lose their credential as an ICF accredited coach. And so if you are a consumer, you're taking a risk with somebody who's non-certified, because there's really no incentive for them to act ethically other than maybe not breaking the law. And there's no disincentive for them in any formal way. Whereas if there's a credentialing body, there's a formal reason why they need to act ethically. And you, as the consumer, can read those ethics. You can point and say, my coach violated this ethic in section 1 and this ethic in section 19. And these are the reasons why. And, you're making a better informed decision as a consumer if you go with a credentialed coach, even if later on they're acting unethically, they're not looking for your best interest. There are ways to, get those coaches out of that credentialing body if they're doing so. If they're just Wild West cowboys, then it's like, whatever, you lost money and they didn't break the law necessarily, you're kind of screwed, and the coach can keep doing
I think that we deviated from the question I asked a little bit, though, because the question I asked was, is there an ethical responsibility for me as a person, human being, who is calling themselves a coach to get credentialed?
My answer is no.
We have talked about the whether or not a coach will act more ethically if they have one or don't have one, and all of these things. But I want to know if me, a human being that wants to be a coach, has an ethical responsibility to go out and get a credential or a certification.
So
Jen wanted to talk long ago.
I can only answer this question for myself. I can't answer this question for anyone else. So for me, it comes down to intention. So I look at, what is my intention in coaching? It is to help people. If that is your intention as a coach, I do think it is your ethical responsibility, maybe not to become credentialed, but to do your due diligence to make sure you learn enough so you don't cause harm. Now, I don't know what specifically that means. For me, it means getting certified through ICF-accredited training, getting credentialed. It may not mean that for everyone, but if your intention as a coach is to help people, I do think it is your ethical responsibility to educate yourself so you don't cause harm. That's my opinion.
I think that even whether or not your intention is to help people, because I think that people can go into this with a myriad of intentions and think they are being helpful, but that other piece, that not to cause harm, because I think that causing harm is far, far worse than maybe not being very good at helping somebody. Like there's a big difference between me maybe not being very helpful, but not hurting or causing harm. Like that, okay. Yeah. I think that's okay. Yeah. But the moment that I am somebody who is causing harm, and that can be done a myriad of ways, right? By prescribing, diagnosing, telling people what to do, assuming liability because of all of these things, and
creating codependency,
creating like, there's so many things can happen in these spaces where somebody is asking for your help, where somebody is being vulnerable, and they are putting themselves in a space where they are trusting you to help them and not to harm them. We don't leave the help out. Trusting you not to harm them.
Yeah.
And that is where I think that there is an ethical responsibility for me. And it may not be to get a certification. It may not be to get a credential. But what it is for me to educate myself. And for me to keep and continue educating myself so that I don't become somebody who causes harm. That's my opinion about that. And I can't say that just for me. I'm going to say that for everybody. Like, if you don't want to be somebody who inadvertently causes harm and damage, then education is what is going to keep you from doing that.
Mm-hmm. And it's easier to do than most people probably realize. It is easier to cause harm than we understand until we are educated. And so that's why it's so important.
And it's as we get educated, there are all these, even, I mean, me as a coach, we make mistakes. We're not perfect along the way, right? And it's a continual learning process. Like we're always learning about, oh, I didn't realize by asking that question, I was creating codependency. I didn't realize that by choosing which direction to go, I am now guiding my client in a certain direction inadvertently. And this is something that you start to learn as you educate and as you commit yourself to a process of learning. So I'm not even going to say that it has to be a specific education, but I think if you're using that word coach, you are setting up an expectation of being somebody that is not only going to help, but is more, I mean, the client probably doesn't even think or consider this. They think they're going to help me, but they're probably not going into it thinking that this person could probably cause me harm or damage if this is done wrong. And so it's our responsibility to realize that, not the client's, I would say. But that's my ethical soapbox.
I think that's true, but I think that's not usually the way it gets uncovered. Sadly, I'm totally in agreement that I think a coach should be educated and continue their education. Do they need to be credentialed? Okay, that's the questionable side to me, but I think they should be certified, which then proves that they've been educated in some fashion and continue that growth. If they're going to work with other humans, they've got to be doing the walk as well. And that to do no harm, I think, is a really important piece of all of this. So definitely good point. Good point.
Yeah, to the point of like educating yourself and continually educating yourself. This is kind of off topic, kind of sort of not. This is why early on when I first started working for CLCI, I was immediately drawn to Anthony's bio. Because in Anthony's bio, yes, that's you, there was this talk about constantly striving for excellence and constantly educating yourself. And I was like, if this is somebody that I will be working alongside, I am in good hands. So to Lisa's point and Anthony's philosophy, educate yourself and and strive to do good versus avoid harm.
I should change my bio back to what it was. I think I changed it since then.
I
I no longer believe
don't want mine to look like that.
And also,
No, it's still there.
something to
Yeah, you should
consider
have seen
too.
your face when I mentioned that, though. I know you weren't
Yeah.
expecting that.
That was a good face.
This is something also that's great to consider about ICF, not to like toot the ICF horn, and it might be something that other governing bodies require as well, but I know at least within ICF it is, and hopefully this is a through line through all the governing bodies, is the big difference between like going out and getting a degree. Like I have a bachelor's. Well, how many people go out and get a bachelor's? They never use it again, and it just sits, and they don't ever even keep educating in that space. So if you have somebody who is an ACC coach or a PCC coach, they are required to continue educating themselves. I am required to get 30 hours of education before my next before I apply. If I want to recertify again, if I want to get my ACC again, I have to have 30 more hours, additional hours of education under my belt in order to do that. And if I stick with ACC and don't level up to PCC, 10 hours of mentoring. So ICF requires that we continue our education to hold our credentials. And I think that is something that is so great and so important because it ensures that the coaches are still learning. So if you have a coach that just is holding a certification, they're probably not being held to that continue to educate yourself standard. And if you have a coach that has no education, nobody's requiring them to continue learning. So that is something, and to keep fresh and to keep, keeping that. But the one thing you can rely on with a credential is the knowledge that if they're going to continue to hold that credential, they are still learning and they're committed to continue learning to hold it. And that's all I got. We're at our time.
Exactly. Now.
And I support that. I support that learning piece. I continue learning myself. I take probably a big course every year. I'm in one right now, and I don't need to have technically for anything until 3 years from now. So, but I like it.
I think it was interesting how we named this controversial coaching, the war, and it sounds almost as if there was even some advocacy for different coaches that weren't certified. There was
that's how our live topics go. Usually.
Yeah,
treaty.
Yeah, no signed a peace treaty. No blood.
Yeah.
I like that.
The NATO of coaches, of life coaching institutions.
He did not say that. He said the NATO of coaching. Oh man.
All right, final thoughts, folks.
Oh.
I saw something we have about mentor coaching.
No. When Lisa was talking about constantly educating yourself and making sure that's there, I was like, that's why we love mentor coaching, because we are under the wing of a credential holder who has the credential we have or higher to ensure that we are coaching in alignment with the ICF core competencies and code of ethics. But even if you choose not to get an ICF credential, ethics, think about doing good versus avoiding harm. Think about not just doing right by your customers, but doing right by the industry. Think of acting in such a way where people don't look at life coaching and say, oh, is this another one of those scammy things? And give freaking back. If it's within your ability to get an ICF credential, go for it. If it's not, think of what ethics that you can uphold that do better versus just avoiding harm. That's all I got.
My final thought, figure out what you want to do in coaching, and that will probably inform you where to go for a credential or a type of certification. That will be the most helpful route, because ICF might not be the way to go. It might be BCC. It might be the health and wellness coach, because you have a goal in mind already. But that being said, Certified Life Coach Institute's not a bad bet. So go and take our classes.
Yeah, I think that the 3-day intensive to get certified is like building your foundation so you can then grow. And you don't know what you don't know. So you've got all these schools out here that are selling you on this long program. But my God, sometimes you just need to start building your foundation before you can make decisions about where you want to go. So for me, the fact that we offer it the way that we do is, I mean, there's nothing out there like it. I've taken, like I took a trauma certification recently, and it layered so beautifully into the foundation that I have built. And there were people in that certification that did not have that foundation. And it was a very different experience for them. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have done it in the order that makes sense. So I would just say to anyone that is considering, you don't know what you don't know, get in, take our 3-day intensive, get certified through ICF accredited training. Before you consider or do anything else, build that foundation, and you can build it in 3 days, which is insane, but it's real. So not to toot our own horn, but it's amazing.
We're tooting our own.
Yeah.
Tooting our horn. We can do that because.
Oh yeah, we tooted the heck out that horn.
The idea of a longer program is not longer. It's the same length. It's just taking longer to get there, meaning you're going to go for this week. You're going to go for that week.
I call it a slow drip. They slow drip the information.
Yeah. I have always been in the space of taking courses in a more rapid succession. For me, that's how I trained eons and eons ago when I was a massage therapist. That's how I did it then. I actually lived at the facility until I finished the course. So for me, that's what works. and why I think it's important to do it intensively, because you get more submerged into the process, in my viewpoint. So it's much more tactile. You're practicing, you're getting in there, you're doing the work, you're getting the reinforcement, you're getting the feedback, and why I find it is beneficial. So I like our training too.
Yep, we teach and then you practice. We teach and then you practice. We teach and then you practice. And there's no faster way to learn how to coach. That's it. That's the method.
One of the facilitators, you hear some dad jokes as well.
Yes. We do tell good dad jokes.
Oh, and we tell them behind the scenes as well.
Sometimes people don't like those jokes. That's too bad for them.
And if they don't like those jokes, they're wrong. So it's okay.
Jerome, final thoughts?
I've got nothing for this one. I think you guys did great.
Aw.
Speaking of not causing harm, I didn't want to misinform any of our viewers, so I stepped back and left it to the active coaches.
Jerome.
So, thank you guys.
But Jerome, how many classes have you been in to where you are full of knowledge? We know.
But the
you were my
accrediting
first
bodies, I'm not informed on all those other accrediting tests. I know the ICF, yes, but outside of that, not so much.
We all learned a little bit today.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining us on CLCI Live. We are live every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Be sure to like, subscribe, share. Definitely comment. Thank you, Kat, for interacting with us. We love chatting with
thank
people.
you, Kat. And
Sue, thank you for dropping by earlier. We will see you guys next week. We will continue Controversial Coaching 101 and take our classes.
Hasta